Malicious male moths murmur muffled mendacity. How acoustic mechanisms evolved for predator detection have been co-opted into deceptive courtship songs. Bats are famous for their echolocating abilities. They emit a series of ultrasonic clicks, which are often beyond our range of hearing. The clicks then bounce off of the environment and return to the bat, creating a mental mind map of potential obstacles or prey. Moths and bats have for millions of years been engaged in an evolutionary arms race with each other. For example, a 2019 paper using phylogenetic techniques has found that hearing evolved separately in nocturnal bats at least 9 times. And while some lineages evolved hearing before the earliest evidence that we have of echolocating bats, predation pressure from bats is still an important driving factor in moth evolution today. This has been illustrated in other papers by studying moths in bat-free habitats and discovering that the neurons responsible for hearing degraded and moths no longer react to auditory stimuli as strongly. Besides their predator-prey relationship with bats, moths are also known for their use of pheromones to attract a mate. A female will choose a perch and release her sex pheromones into the air in order to signal to males that she's ready to breed. Pheromones can travel across large distances and are conveniently less conspicuous than, say, a cricket that alerts all nearby predators to its location with its stridulations. The sex pheromones of approximately 700 moth species have been described. In contrast, the importance of auditory communication in moth courtship remains relatively understudied. Moth ears are some of the simplest in all of nature, consisting just of a thin tympanic membrane, an air sac resonator, and 1 to 4 auditory nerve cells depending on the species. But despite this morphological simplicity, moths have developed a suite of unexpected behavioral adaptations. When a moth hears a bat, it will fly erratically, looping or zigzagging, or simply they freeze and drop out of the air. As well as acrobatic displays, moths use their abilities to perceive sound in communication with their own species. It is not completely unsurprising, then, that sounds produced by moths have gone understudied by humans. As humans, we have a sensory bias to phenomena we can perceive. Sounds in the range of 90 decibels, such as those produced by crickets and cicadas, are more obvious to humans, and therefore more likely to be researched. Indeed, the study of cricket mating calls has been integral in unlocking the mechanisms of reproductive isolation and speciation. Moths, with their chiropteran enemies hunting by sound, have courtship songs that at a much higher frequency and are normally only audible a few centimeters away from the caller. This inconspicuousness allowing them to evade predation and study alike. While courtship calls were thought to be rare in moths, the behavior has been observed in a growing number of species, indicating that mating vocalizations are much more widespread than once believed. In a paper published in Acoustic Communications in Animals, researcher Ryo Nakano attempts to uncover some aspects of moth acoustic behavior. In the focal species of this study, the lucerne moth Nomophila nersitica, pheromones do play a role in attracting mates. However, the males also have a pair of mesothoracic tymbals, which are a pair of membranes that produce sound via vibration on either side of the body underneath the wings. Once within a few centimeters of the female, the male will bend his abdomen to either the left or right and produce a series of clicks using the corresponding tymbal. The author found that these ultrasonic clicks mimic the calls of an echolocating bat and actually induce an anti-predator freezing response in the female. This indicates that these moths use a deceptive signal to increase their chances of mating with the frozen female. It was found that males that were surgically ablated so that they could not produce any sound had a mating success rate of just less than 10%. However, ablated males' chances of success significantly improved by up to 30% when a recording of the insectivorous brown bat Epticicus fuscus was played during attempted mating. Indeed, there was little difference between the mating success of intact males and silenced males attempting to mate in combination with playback of either their own calls or the calls of E. fuscus. This indicates that females do not discriminate between male courtship songs and bat calls, as both sounds elicit anti-predator freezing. This study also found that even with their genitals removed, males still attempted to mate more often when being able to hear their own songs, whether produced by their own timbals or listening to the playback of their own courtship songs. Perhaps this could indicate that hearing another male's song excites the males due to interest-specific competition. The author suggests that this deception might stem from the males taking advantage of the sensory bias of the females. That is, the female hearing is tuned to detect sounds within the range of bat echolocation calls. Otherwise, any sound might evoke a predator evasion response. The males exploit this by mimicking the sonic characteristics of bat calls. Looking at it this way, it seems that the system is rigged against females. Yet this doesn't explain why many lineages such as tiger and lichen moths have separately evolved true love songs that are non-deceptive but convey information about the fitness of a potential mate. There is even a moth that uses both strategies, the yellow peach moth, Conogathys punctiferalis. The first part of the male's call is a series of short clicks that mimic an echolocating bat and induces freezing in the female. The second part of the call is long and sustained, and it is this part of the call that the females recognize as coming from a member of her own species and potential mate. The second part of the call induces the female to raise her wings and enter a receptive posture. It is clear that a better understanding of the actual mechanisms females use to interpret courtship songs is needed. As seen in Thomas's lecture on speciation, it is important to establish if there is linkage disequilibrium between the trait, in this case the sonic properties of a male song, and the preference of the female to that trait. In addition, the underlying differences in how true and deceptive courtship songs evolved need to be clarified. However, if we can tease apart these intricacies, it will allow us a wealth of opportunities to better understand the evolution of courtship signals and the co-evolution of male signals and female preferences. Mate choice is one of the driving forces of speciation. This is because choosing a partner based on a particular trait can lead to that trait quickly becoming common within a population. If populations prefer different traits, gene flow between the two populations decline and reproductive isolation can occur, which is one of the main features that divides two species. In this scenario, mate choice has created an intrinsic barrier between two populations. The quiet songs of moths, both true and deceptive, have gone under study by researchers. Further research into moth acoustics is required not only to understand phenomena such as speciation, but to understand how we as humans impact moths. For example, how has anthropogenic noise pollution affected moths? What is clear is that despite moths' hearing being morphologically simple, an array of emergent behaviors such as both true and deceptive signaling, as well as various predatory avoidance strategies have evolved as a result.